Ah,
It's been
yeah,
quite a day, huh?
yeah. I was on for about, I don't know, was that 3 hours or something,
Oh my gosh.
talking about Mehera.
It was three
Oh,
hours.
I missed that.
And then the
Yeah,
LA Center had something.
yeah. Someone from there. This reminds me of something. I mean, everybody was sharing, so I didn't share much. But as I mentioned when I shared that I would get there and Mayru would say, "Well, Jeff, we'll let you sleep for a rest for a couple of days, and then we have some work for you to do." And so I would, wind up working like the entire time, harder over there than I did over here. And one time there were about 3 days left in my trip, and Mayru said, I've got another job for you to do." And inside I'm thinking, oh my God, I thought I was going to get to at least rest the last 3 days. And she said there was a bath stall that needed doing. Now I had to decide, am I going to do a super job on this shower stall, or am I going to just do a cosmetic job, kind of sand and paint? Or am I going to go in and caulk it and prepare it? I decided, well, I just better do a good job. I and he gave me a couple of the servant boys, and we're in there, sanding and caulking and everything like that, steady for a couple of days, and before we got to painting. But I happened to say, who it was at the back of the main house. So, I said, what is this? Is this for servants? Is this where the servants bathe and everything? They said, no, this is where Mara and Mani bathe. Oh my God. I mean, because it was in such bad shape. And what they did is everything on the front of the house was all for us. And they completely denied us the whole back place. They completely denied because, I mean, I thought, oh, this place is, really a mess. I mean, it was just paint was peeling and mold and everything like that. And they did everything for us. And they just, and yeah, everything for us, and we saw the very best, and they denied themselves. And I just happened to stumble upon, and luckily I decided I'm going to try to do a good job, you know. So that's the way they were.
I
And
didn't share because I never knew Mara.
yeah,
Oh,
Never
we'll
read.
just have another one.
And at first, I think I feel less than. And then I thought, oh my God, I get to hear all these stories. Thank you, Bubba. And I just sat there and just like bathed it all in. And I feel like I got a real hit of who she is. And that's what a gift. I mean,
yeah,
all I had before was pictures and the written word. I didn't have these stories coming out of people with emotion and love and tears in their eyes, and their hearts are flung open. And it's just been an amazing day, I must say. Thank you all.
yeah.
Yeah, these sharing meetings have been spectacular, haven't they?
Totally. Just
Yeah.
amazing.
No, I had never met anyone like Mara. What yeah, very natural and down to earth, you might say, and yet her interior was nothing but heavenly. I would say. If I pictured her, it's like I picture her as like a building with all these windows all around, and you go into the building, and you would not run into any obstruction, no walls or anything. You go from one side of her to the other. It was all wide open. Yeah, no vortex of an ego in there that you might kind of bump up against. Yeah, it was lovely. And it's funny, I was on that. There were only about 3 guys and 60 women on there.
Mhm.
Really, I mean, it's like you guys you women probably didn't notice, but it was like we were a paltry few. Uh, even though she was very, I mean, very loving. Yeah. So, yeah. Hey, Martha. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Yeah, I noticed that as well. I was like, where are the men?
Yeah. I somehow didn't feel, I mean, at first I felt a little bit shy around her, but I sensed that she didn't enjoy the us being shy around her. You know, it kind of makes her into, it takes the naturalness out of it. So I was just kind of myself. I mean, even when sometimes she would ask me, I mean, for a whole trip to sing, and there was one guy there that definitely was not a singer and never wanted to sing. And I would say, she would ask me to sing, and I'd say, I'll sing after that guy right there. And I avoided having to sing any time, because just having to sing right on the spot with no accompaniment, and I don't know, it was, but she never reprimanded me for that. I mean, that was kind of how I felt. Then years later, I thought, people, oh, you never say no to Mehera. And I don't not necessarily recommend that, but I certainly did. Yeah.
I just have a question about I was just wondering about the post that Mehera occupied in Baba's Advent. Is that what Mary occupied in Jesus?
Yeah.
Is that the Virgin
And
Mary?
Sita in the time of Ram, and
Right,
Radha in the
right,
time
right.
of Krishna.
Right.
I mean, I've mentioned this. I don't know if I should mention it here, but well, it's the truth. I'll mention this because I was hesitant to do it on that, but back in the early 70s, Adi shared with us and shared on other occasions. Adi was like a real, he was a real student, a real expert on God Speaks. And one of the things in God Speaks is that there are certain roles that are played around Baba. Someone plays the role of Peter, and Baba said that was Erich. Someone plays the role of John, which was Balkal Churi, different ones. And so but someone plays that role, and then they're done with that role, and someone else plays that role. But Baba once told Adi, Mehera is always the same one.
But wasn't Mary Jesus's mother?
Well, the Mandalay never knew whether it was Mary, the mother of Jesus, or Mary Magdalene.
But Mary Magdalene was a prostitute.
Not
Wow.
really, not really.
No?
No, that's kind of as it came down. But Mehera herself, I mean, someone told me that Mehera said that she has always been a woman. So that kind of gives you a little hint. You know, all the rest of us get stuck, you know, being opposite gender, you know, and suffer all the consequences. No, but she was, so I do feel from what Adi said is that she is eternally there in the same way that Baba is always there. You know, I mean, I once kind of visualized the scene of Erich saying goodbye to Baba and becoming realized. I mean, I kind of visualize that. And looking back, Baba doesn't get to ever leave this creation. We're here for a time and then we're out of here, either through liberation or realization. And Baba is always eternally here. And I feel this is my opinion from what Adi said, that Mehera is always here. There's a quote from Baba, if I can remember it exactly, where he says, the same show, the same drama, the same show, the same actors, 24 hours a day, eternally. and I have not only to stay awake, but smile and clap. That's Baba's own words, except the first word. I can't quite remember. Maybe Larry Pesta might know. He's got all those books behind him, you know.
For the 700 years, he must get some rest or respite.
I think his body gets a rest, but you know, he's right there with you. He's right here with me. He's right there with Angela, following a step for step. How can that not be exhausting?
Maybe that's where Mahapralaya comes in. He gets
Yeah,
rest
I
then.
think Mahapralaya is when he actually does get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, all right, okay.
This is one of my favorite pictures
Yes.
of Baba, and it has come alive for me a number of times. So I take that to mean that I have a connection with that, especially. Wow, what a life. And Ruth,
Hey, Jeff.
that was wonderful, Ruth. You do beautifully the way you host those, and the wonderful spirit, and yeah,
Thanks. It was a
Went-
lot of fun.
yeah, went on for hours and hours.
It did. It did. But you know, I don't even think we touched on Mehera.
Yeah, I happened to be in India. Erich asked me if I would stay there one time after the Pilgrim Center, and so I did, and that was the time that Mehera passed on, and it was in the middle of the summer, so there weren't many, practically nobody there. But sometime I'll share that that time of being that time in her life.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I had an interesting quip that I wanted to share with Marinaz. If Marinaz is the one that has a father that was a Pramashran boy.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. There's something I wanted to share with her when I see her.
Okay.
On
Yeah.
Zoom. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Sometime I hope to get Marinaz's description of her father, meaning somebody that's just on fire with Baba, with that deep reverent heart, having been with Baba as a young child when he was giving out divine love to these kids, and what it does, what kind of person you become.
I know. Iraj would often say that to everyone he met, his father would say, "You are Baba, we are Baba, or I am Baba." There was something he said to everyone.
It was so dear, you know, and he knew what he was talking about too.
Yeah.
You know, in the few English words that he had.
I have a short one by Mehera.
Yeah.
Remember, beloved Baba, don't forget him for a moment. He loves to be loved.
Great. Yeah.
That would help. When two devotees of Meher Baba came in his presence expressing difference of opinion, the avatar said, "I bring out your weaknesses because I love you. Be honest. Weaknesses there are. Do not be afraid of them. You must be afraid of dishonesty. Thoughts can be good or bad. One should take care of one's action. Had it not been for the weaknesses of everyone, there would have been no difference between you, me, and you."
Lovely. You know, before we have a moment of silence, Baba, back in the 30s, Baba would be down at Lower Mehrabad with the men in the mornings, and then in the afternoon he would come up and be with the women. And often he would come up the hill and he would go like this. Okay, which meant who's been fighting today? And he'd get those two people there, and they would have to kind of, they'd have to speak out and it could be like really intense, very tense and everything. They'd be, yelling back and forth and everything. And then at a certain point, Baba said, now go and embrace. And I remember Rano saying some of the longest journeys she ever took were those 10 steps over to embrace, this person that she was at such odds with. So Baba had fun with our weaknesses rather than that there's something unhealthy or weird or whatever in our weaknesses.
Somehow in Baba's presence. So.
What's that?
Somehow in Baba's presence, it all gets washed
Yeah.
away, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, not that, yeah. I don't know if we can do that quite as successfully. Well, let's have a few moments of silence. Baba. Hey, good. We got Bill Cliff here too. Bill, if you are any story about being with Darwin comes to mind, don't hesitate to chime in, because Bill spent a lot of time going to Darwin's meetings, probably decades. So don't hesitate. Now, you're saying where we are. We're on misprojections. But first, one of the major themes of effort and grace is giving things to Baba, giving ourselves to Baba. And that came about when Darwin was with Baba, and Baba said, if you love me, you must give me everything, your strengths and your weaknesses, your joys and your sorrows, your good and your bad. Give them all to me, hold nothing back, and be free. That may not be the exact quote, but the idea is that became Darwin's practice of giving things to Baba. And so I've had some time, at the gateway there, whole evenings where nothing is happening because nobody's coming to the center. So I sat down on the sofa and I typed out kind of what I kind of gathered from Darwin and Erich about giving to Baba. And so I wrote it up, and I don't know if Angela, whether you have it, if you guys are interested, not now, but I mean, if you're interested, you can link into that and get a little idea of how Darwin, in his very low key way, introduced a buddy of mine and I into about giving things to Baba and what that means and what it does to us within. Okay, now are we on misprojection, is that it? Page 22?
That's correct, yeah.
Where is it in the PDF?
Page 12 of the PDF.
And one thing to mention too is, I mean, Darwin in this period, in these next sections talks about the subconscious coming up and skewing our thinking and everything. But what a story comes to mind. There was a woman named Ann Forbes, wonderful lady from Florida. And in 1952, she was thinking of going to see Baba. And, and then what happened is Baba got in the accident in Prague, Oklahoma, and she thought, a perfect master would never get in an automobile accident. And so she said, she didn't go and see Baba. And then, but after, I mean, that kind of thinking kind of overtook her, and she didn't go to see Baba. But she did see him in 1956 and realize what she had missed, just by a thought coming in there and keeping her from seeing Baba in 52. She really lived to regret that. I mean, she was quite open about that. So those thoughts that come from the subconscious can kind of derail some of our best impulses. And this is kind of what Darwin talks about, this type of thing. Okay, so Angela's going to call on somebody and read a section and feel free to chime in how it relates to your own life. Examples are good because some of it, Darwin says it's a little more abstract. And to get some examples kind of makes it a little more, brings it down to the level of our life.
Misprojection. Maintaining misconceptions applies not only to ourselves. It is interesting to observe that we may be unconsciously accentuating things we have observed in other people, instead of inwardly asserting and affirming the truth about their being. We make a mistake if we stereotype people. If we engage in projecting their material side back to them, it will tend to grow in them. This kind of projection embraces the limiting idea that we are all separate individuals, instead of the more comprehensive truth that, as Baba says, at the soul level, we are one. So, if we would look for the soul, the ideal self in others, that will become accentuated in them. Emphasizing the soul quality of others can become part of our inner work. On the practical level, we take into account the illusory sanskaric aspect of people, but at the same time regard them in the light of their true ideal self, emphasizing that rather than any other side of them. By doing this, we are helping them to remove veils. This means looking upon people as, in the last analysis, spiritual beings really seeking God. To get this perception affirmed, Baba is doing everything. Baba is the doer. I know that for most of us, it takes an effort to project the basic truth about people. But if one can develop this more flexible attitude, this benefits not only their consciousness, but our own. Because what we visualize affects our own being. If we visualize weaknesses in others, that reflects on our own consciousness. If we visualize the ideal self of others, we are calling forth the same in ourselves. The truth in our own being. It is not always easy to see the higher side of people, but it is worth trying to do. Around Baba, we would experience this kind of projection from him in a very powerful way. The radiation of Baba's presence has the effect of completely enveloping one's lower nature and calling forth one's higher self. It is not as though he is in a closed box and you are in a closed box, and you do not really affect each other. He is truth and reality, and he is radiating truth and reality and light and divine love. And you are radiating falsehoods and illusion. Something has to give. So when the illusions begin to give way, light begins to dawn, and one begins to experience a deep inner integration and spiritual upliftment.
Wow, that is incredible. Boy, anyone have any comments on that? That's incredible what Darwin said there. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Mahu.
Well,
this is extremely powerful, what Darwin is talking about, and actually reminding us as to who we could be and how we can conduct ourselves and living in our lives. Really, Jeff, this brings me to this conclusion that if we get to see people at the soul level, and as Baba says, as one, and not to really color their personality based on our misconception and imagination, then we must not do any slandering. We must not do any backbiting. We must not do criticizing, as Baba says. Baba says criticizing is almost a disease. Even if you don't like something and you talk about it, that's criticism, and that's uncalled for. Try not to do it. But, you know, when, especially with social matters, you know, social injustice, nowadays politics especially, and so forth, there are a lot of that is going around. And deep inside, when I see it, it really bothers me, I must say. But I'm only observing. I know that Baba has talked about it on and on and on. And also Darwin here is reminding us that, you know, at the practical level, even on the practical level, how should we, you know, look at people? How should we treat them? And knowing that Baba is doing everything and he's the only doer. So, you know, they're not really doing anything. Baba is doing everything. I mean, can you imagine Baba is doing everything? Good and bad. He's the only doer. How do we explain that, Jeff?
Yeah. Oh, well, there are some other hands up, and we will we'll come back to that unless some of the hands are responding to that. But this is, you know, being able to see people at a deeper level is an effort of a lifetime, I would say. It's not like a weekend seminar where you can finally see the higher self of somebody or the better side. But we'll let's see what comes up from the other hands.
Peter?
All right, thank you. I'm kind of saying my prayers before I say this. You know, I just got done with a 9-day cleanse yesterday, and working on patting myself on the back for that. And I talked to somebody else, and they're like, "Wow, it's like such a big deal." And I was afraid because, from what I understand, anger is the liver is a seat of anger, and I've certainly had a lot of it focused on my family. And it's like during this pandemic and during the hurricane season in Florida and during the holiday season, there's been lack of reconciliation in my mother's affairs, and I haven't gotten what was due me. And I've been so burned up at a family member. And I thought, you know, when I get in this utter disgust and contempt, when I sit in it, I realize that I just don't want to feel that way. If I don't have to, I just want to love myself more and rise up above it. And when I can't, or when maybe I'm not willing to do the heavy lifting, I remember that, you know, Bob is feeling this, Bob is feeling that, and it helps to alleviate it a bit. But I think what I'm getting at is, I remember that there was this mirror work course I took, and I'd be happy to share the source of it if it's still free. It was free a la COVID. And one of the exercises that I just did yesterday or the day before was, it had us picture someone on a stage that we're angry at on a stage, and show them having accomplishment and achievement and being happy and like being their best self. And I remember picturing my sister, as a matter of fact, accomplishing, being You know, a lot of her demons reconciled, being, let's just say, fit and healthy, and achieving awards. And I was a little surprised that it actually helped to reduce my anger, to see her in a more positive light. And I also want to mention that, and I think it's just the toughest thing sometimes for people to reconcile. And it took me around 10 years or 15 after I was introduced to this. But if I am really burned up at somebody, how beneficial it is to really hope for the best for them. When I can leverage my mind to say, all right, you know what, I'm so burned up with this person, it's not my right and it's not my place to say that they don't deserve good things. When I distill it down, people would say, well, you don't deserve this and you don't deserve that. I'm like, who are you the right to tell me that? And when I think of wishing the best for these people and saying, you know what, it's like my father could have gone to prison for God knows how many years, or when I see him and when I can leverage myself to say I still love him, visualize him maybe in prison. I've done this occasionally, is embracing him. I was his only, I was a son he really loved. I mean, he didn't really know his other son. And to hug him and embrace him, giving a little bit of latitude to embrace him and to give him love. I do that occasionally, but also, and yeah, thank you for the comment. When I can remember, because I got tired of doing it actually, is picturing them with abundance, with everything that God wants for them, with riches, with accomplishment, with whatever's best for them, I guess. And what I've also learned to do, and this came from, you know, somebody else that was a resident, is instead of sometimes wishing the best things for them, I would do japa and blow it in their direction. So again, I see that if I take Mayor Baba's name and blow it in their direction, what I call them blowing love, then to me it has infinite power, infinite bliss, and infinite knowledge, a love that knows truly what's infinitely best for the person, a bliss that knows what's infinitely best for the person, and also a knowledge that knows what's best for them to know. So it's, yeah, I think it's a daunting practice. And whenever I get in it, it transforms me to a degree. The thing is, it never really took me over the hump. It never took me over the hump. But I think now, since I'm on my own, I want to get into practice of doing it more to try and put the nail in a coffin of my hate, because I question how much it really serves me. Yeah, I'll cut it loose. There's more to share later on, but
Yeah.
I'll cut it there.
Yeah, well, that kind of partially answers some of what Mahu was talking about, and we've all been there in varying degrees, Peter. Angela.
Yeah, that's true. And Heidi.
Hi, everyone. I'm speaking to you now from Florida. I'm here for a while. So just to let you know my location. A couple of things I wanted to say. I found a quote by Baba that reminds me of this misprojection in a way. It's a little pamphlet called What Baba Means by Real Work. And at the very back of it, he says, quote, I am ever conscious that I am in you, while you are never conscious that I am in you. Daily I support you and share your consciousness. Now I want you to uphold me and share my consciousness of divine love and share with all you come in contact with. And it reminded me of this because the misprojections and the anti-misprojections, if you will, is taking our stand in the truth, regardless of what we see in front of us or the behavior of a person. Now, this is one of the most difficult things, I think, for anyone. And it's even difficult to do with ourselves.
Yeah.
But we have to do it. And I'll take a risk and share this, and maybe Larry will support me a little bit. But there's something called in the Christian metaphysical world, and I know Darwin read a lot of this work, but there's something specifically called the spiritual mind treatment. And it has quite a few steps to it, but the guts of it is that you actually take your stand and voice in an affirmative prayer way what a person is in truth, or where they're headed toward in truth, rather than what they're living or expressing, or any negative that they're dealing with. So it's just interesting to compare the two and to work with the two. So I thought I would mention it, and you can look it up if you're interested in it. Spiritual mind treatment. And it reminds me of this. It has parallels. And radiating Baba's presence has the, as Darwin says, has the effect of completely enveloping one's lower nature and calling forth.
Oop, we lost you, Heidi. It must be because you're in Florida. So while Heidi's coming back in, let's go. Why don't you go to Anthony there?
Oh, yeah, she's back. Sort of. When internet is slow, it's a little odd trying
Higher
to communicate.
self. And
Heidi, you may be able to hear us, but we can't hear you. But we're going to come back to you. We will for sure.
All right, and Anthony?
Yeah, thank you. I was really moved by what you shared, Peter, and I was just feeling, similarly with my dad. He's, recently taken on some pretty extreme political beliefs, and this is the man I grew up with, who, we've had a pretty good relationship, and I just see how when I see him as his beliefs and I start bringing those types of things up, how the beauty of who he is and who he's been for so many decades becomes eclipsed by just seeing this person with these extreme beliefs. And when I don't choose to see that side of him, and I address him, I guess as Darwin's saying, as a soul on the path, and look at him like that, it's amazing how that side of him I've always loved just comes out automatically. Based on how I choose to see him. And I can just feel how much it's affected me and my life, the way people have chosen to see me. And, I realize ideally we're not supposed to really be affected by the way anybody chooses to see us. But, I know with my current state of spiritual evolution, I'm still affected by that a pretty good amount. And I can tell, when people echo back things to me that are, oh, you're a this, you're a that, Anthony, you're just like that. It does feel like it eclipses all of your good qualities and who you really are. And that part of it goes away, and you start to it's not that it goes away, it becomes eclipsed, and then you start believing yourself to be, all these annoying things and this and that. And by the flip side, like Darwin was sharing, when you get those people that do see the highest in you, and and especially if they echo it back to you in a nice way, like, hey, wow, you've really got something going here with this, this is wonderful. I really think you could do wonderful things in the world with this. It's just automatically that side comes out of you. And so, yes, I totally agree with how important it is to see people in the highest. And I know how that affects me, and I wish, I could constantly extend that same thing to everybody. And yeah, it really helps us all on our path a lot. So thank you.
Beautifully expressed, Anthony. Beautiful.
And Kathy?
Oh, we can't hear you yet, Kathy.
Yep, I had to unmute.
Oh,
Hi,
there you go. Yeah.
I just wanted to say to really thank you, Peter, because it would be so much easier to actually create a play for me personally to know something about somebody that's really good, even though they're struggling and maybe like going through like even a month of just misery because life isn't working for them, to put them on the stage and let them relive something successful. Thank you so much. I think that is an exercise that will really, really help me to be able to get over if something doesn't feel right. So I just wanted to just say that. Thank you.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And Gabrielle?
Well, I just really appreciate the conversation. And Anthony, I loved the way you put that. It really, it was very clear. It made me think of that St. Francis, I believe, had said, what a blessing it is to be misunderstood. So any comments on that, I'd love to hear. It reminds me, I've been reading the tail end of the book of Brother, come on.
Sun, Sister, Moon.
No, Brother Lawrence,
Oh,
the
yeah.
little book. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he also talks about how he was so eager for the opportunity to experience suffering for his Lord. So that this is interesting. I love comments on this too. So at the end of his life, he had this terrific side and pain in his right side, and so he would ask to be rolled on his right side. And his disciples and friends were begging him to please come back, and he said, "Please allow me just a few more minutes to experience pain for our Lord." So I'm interested, those two fit together for me, the misunderstood and that. And how do people feel about that, and any comments? I'd really appreciate.
Any more hands?
We don't have any more hands.
Well, I'll just mention one thing. I mean, just this is something earlier. I could, working at the center all those years, I could always tell who had just come back from seeing Kitty, because they were so lit up and so large from their just going over their interview with Kitty. I mean, it was obvious. You could see the before and after. She somehow projected onto them the very best in them, drew out. Even if she was a little critical or whatever, it was valuable feedback that she would give them at a very deep level. So that was something wonderful to see, the transformative effect that our behavior can have on somebody, as in the case of Kitty.
That is very inspiring. And Robin?
I'm just thinking about what Gabriella said, and I think that if we're, I'm not sure I have it right, but if somebody interprets us from how we look or the outside or anything we say, it's got to come way short of who we really are, because we're really God. And to even know that, I could see where he would say that. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, so true.
Yeah. Kathy again?
Yeah, I was just going to say that that when Gabrielle was talking about, I can't remember who it was, that she was reading about, let me turn on my right side and feel, it reminded me of metta, or you're breathing in the pain of others to exhale it in love. And so that's just a comment, because she was, anybody had a comment. So that was my comment. It reminds me of doing metta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A valuable practice.
Yeah. And Mahu?
I unmuted. I learned something more interesting today just from this paragraph that Darwin is opening up to us. I'm really grateful for it. First of all, in this one, he distinguished that how kind of was easier to see people with their truth when they were around Baba. Why? Because Baba was already emanating the love and truth and would see people in that way, the very powerful way. And of course, when Baba's presence is radiating and is there, you dare not to behave. And that itself is an upliftment for you to be able to see the truth in others. But what I like to emphasize here is what Darwin is talking about. He mentions that when we see the truth in others, seeing them at the soul level, their truth, and not the illusory sanskaric part of them, it helps them with their upliftment of their conscience. Not even it helps them, but it also helps us. See, that's the key. And then he says, but when we visualize the weakness in others, that itself a projection on us. That seeing that weakness in others reflects on our own consciousness. Isn't this interesting? So, not even we are not helping them, but we're not helping ourselves because we become it. We project their weaknesses on our own consciousness, and our own consciousness is like a contagious in a way. So I thought that's very interesting. I had no idea that when I see the weaknesses in others, that itself would reflect on my own consciousness. So I see also the weakness on myself, instead of seeing the truth and empowerment in myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
Yeah.
learned this today. Thank you.
Excellent. And Gabriella?
What was I going to say now? Yes, that when I was hearing that about Kitty, it made me think that so often I kind of want to be like that. I want to see the highest in somebody else. And I have a tendency to speak that instead of to simply see them, simply be with them. And I have to actually reverse that way of being for myself, because it's very easy for me to talk about how wonderful they are, and that may mean zero to that person unless it's just I really can see them and feel them. Thanks.
Yeah. Yep.
And Larry Pesta.
I taught ESL at the community college level for 24 years. And I'm qualified to teach English 101, freshman composition. But I always taught ESL because I enjoy teaching sentence level, paragraph level, that kind of stuff. But one time, because of scheduling, they scheduled me to teach composition 101. And I'm really not qualified to do that. I have all the degrees and everything, but I don't have the expertise. So I wondered how I would do in the class teaching. But it kind of took care of itself, because I like to have one-on-one writing workshops with students after they write something. And I noticed that after teaching ESL, I would look at one of these freshman compositions with the student, and I'd look at it and I'd go, this is really good. And the student would look at me like I was from Mars. And I would say things like, sure, look at you've punctuated after every sentence. You've indented, you know, and because I had this different attitude towards them and their writing abilities based on all the other experience with papers that I had such difficulty reading, this class, they became like super writers by the end of the semester, simply because I had a different attitude towards them. So Darwin kind of reminds me that even the energy I carry around everywhere, every day is affecting people. You know, Mayor Baba used to tell his close disciples to smile a lot. He used to say, smile, it helps people if you smile. Don't worry, be happy. So it's kind of, or, you know, I think about sitting in the mall, if you've ever sat in a mall and stared at the back of somebody's head as an experiment, just to wait and see how long the person will start turning around and looking because they can feel something different. So it's kind of like that. I mean, these are sad times for a lot of people. We need to turn on the smiles. We need to let the Baba energy out because people really need it. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Good, Larry. Wonderful. You know, oh, what was I going to say here? It's slipping my mind. Larry got me distracted.
While you're waiting, can I just say we need see-through masks though, so that if we're smiling, people can see that we're smiling.
Yeah. Oh, the one thing I was going to say is one of the things that really helps is actually taking an interest in others. I mean, taking a genuine interest in others, because if you just kind of see them as someone over there, it's hard to tune in, get beyond their surface part of them into a deeper part of them, so you can actually appreciate and imagine there's something behind that that's richer and more positive and loving. But taking a personal interest in others gets you, I mean, really gives you what can I say, brings you into the inner side of them, than if they're just, you're just kind of relating to the external side. But here's one thing I remember back when I, you know, moved to Schenectady in 1970. Now I was kind of brought up, you know, everybody is first in importance, and, you know, give them, and, you know, and one time we got, this one guy seemed like a nice guy, and he wanted to go to the center with us when it would be a 16-hour drive. And I remember Gene Shaw saying, three's a crowd. But we took this guy down here, and he created such a disruption at the center that we had to turn around and bring him back up. But one of the things that Darwin said back then, and I didn't like it at first, but I found that it's one of the tools in your toolkit as far as interpersonal relationships. He said, sometimes you have to keep a polite distance. And now that one didn't agree with me originally. I didn't like the idea of keeping a polite distance, but sometimes how you feel inwardly is one thing, and what you demonstrate externally may have to be not the same. In other words, a woman may have to, with someone that's got the wrong ideas about them, may have to inwardly be there present with them, but also kind of keep a distance. So that there's the outer response, and then there's the inner response. And those two things I found valuable from the Mondale and Darwin, and that in relating to others. That's just throwing another thing in this complicated thing of how do we relate to others so that we stay in harmony and not get thrown back into a state of separateness.
Great. And Patty?
Well, this is all of what's been offered up has just reinforced what Darwin has been saying and what Baba has been saying. I mean, Baba met everybody from the place of where they are. And our capacity is there to do that. But our conditioned mind and sanskars are in the way. But that moment where we can meet somebody with the higher levels, the levels of compassionate understanding, oneness, sympathy, empathy, all this stuff will give us a fraction of a second to shift from our conditioned mind into that space of meeting them where they are, so that knowing, hopefully, that we're remembering their Baba. This is Baba. This is Baba interacting with Baba. And but I hear everybody saying that throughout this whole thing. It's like it does appear to be difficult, but we're moving in that direction at all times. Everything that happens supports awakening for us. Everything. That's what I wanted to offer. Jai Baba.
Patty, beautifully said.
Yeah.
Very sweet. And Robin?
I think I forget what I was going to say, but well, I don't know, but I was thinking about way back in reading Ram Dass and hearing him give all those talks and all that. And he talked about that there's really only one being in the universe, and that's God. But the best he could do is experience it at least as two, that there's him and that everybody else is God trying to wake us up to know that there's really only one. So there's, there's two, but so everybody, and I had to struggle with that for such a long time that it seems so selfish and self-centered to think that you're here only to be in my dream, to wake me up to know that I am God. And it seems like, what Darwin is saying here, and what I was going to say before that I forgot, is the letter that Baba wrote about how we shouldn't get overly involved in other people's families, affairs, and things like that. And it was a very stark warning. And at first I thought, whoa, because that just seemed very counterintuitive to me. But I really have come to appreciate, somebody, especially if you see them like in their story, and the story is kind of repeating and, it's a grooved in pattern. And, I used to feel like, well, but I see it and I can help you, and then I thought, no. I mean, that's what they need to go through. I'm not a part of it. I could make myself a part of it, but that often is a big mistake. And, just to accept that that's their karma, their sanskaras or whatever, and step out of it and still try to do what everybody's talking about, which is to see them as coming from the one. There's only one force in the universe. It's God, it's love. And to see that that's what's swimming around in everything, and try not to, overstep the role but what Darwin's saying here is how important we are interrelated and important to one another. So it's a balancing act, that's for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
And Hugh?
Larry mentioned smiling, and one of the things I remember most about going to Darwin's meetings was the way that he smiled. And his smile was so powerful and so contagious that, even thinking about it now makes me smile. And so I just wanted to mention that that's a great comment, Larry.
Yeah.
And Anthony?
Yeah, right on there, Hugh. I was thinking about Larry's comment also about the smiling. It's funny, just yesterday I was actually reading a little bit about the Dalai Lama, and he, for him, smiling is a spiritual practice. And he said that he practices shooting smiles people's way because he knows what it does to them spiritually, uplifting them. So then it went on to say the Dalai Lama's spiritual routine starts at 3 a.m. He wakes up, and I think he does 3 to 4 hours of meditation. And then he went on to tell people that smiling is more important than meditation. So that's pretty incredible coming from somebody that meditates that much. And I had a second thought too, based on what you were saying, Jeff, about how Darwin said sometimes you have to keep a healthy distance from people. And I've had this interesting little thing happen lately where there's been actually a couple of really close people in my life that I love dearly. A couple of them were very important teachers in my life too at certain points years ago. And so many parts of them I love, but there's certain parts that have been very not helpful for my growth and confidence. And that's been interesting, kind of, God, let me get my train of thought here, right? That sometimes it's not an all or none thing of like completely cutting somebody off and remaining a healthy distance. It's like there might be certain parts of them in certain situations that you realize I've got to keep that polite distance in this way with these people, but there's some other ways I can interact with them that are healthy. So that's been an interesting thing of having to readjust to a couple of people in that way, to where I still love them in my life and want them there, but not in that old way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well said. Yeah. Hey, let's go on to the next thing. We're gonna be misprojecting a little too much. Let's go on to coloring of our thoughts.
Yes, page 23, that would be 13 of the PDF.
I've gathered from Mehera Baba that we have to deal with our samskaras at all levels. We are more conscious of the samskaras at our surface level, our surface consciousness, whereas in the subconsciousness, we may be aware of them only as feelings or impelling forces. The relationship between conscious and subconscious samskaras is that there is some coloring of our conscious thought because of our subconscious samskaras. In other words, when we allow samskaras at the subconscious level to impel us into actions or cause us to draw conclusions about things, the effects we experience by doing so tend to confirm and solidify our misconceptions in the subconscious mind. For example, samskaras come out into the conscious mind in the form of certain desires, which have already been formed by certain misconceptions in our subconscious. When we put those desires into actions, we experience certain effects that are of the same nature and that concord with the original misconception, thus confirming that misconception. We may not be able to understand where all these impelling forces and feelings come from or what they involve. But as time goes on, we can become more aware of the mechanics of them as feelings or impelling forces. Then we can have some intelligent control over them and not respond to them, rather than be impelled to put them into action. It is like diffusing a bomb by understanding and intelligently regulating its mechanism.
Can anyone give an example of that? How we buy into at a subconscious level causes us to buy into something, we carry it out, and it seems to confirm this subconscious belief.
Okay. I didn't really understand this mechanics of misconceptions in the subconscious mind triggering or existing sanskaras. I mean, I think I kind of got it, but I really didn't completely get it. But toward the end, you know, it actually, like Baba says, you got to maintain vigil over your actions. So, you know, it's about us making a conscious effort to watch our thought process. And the thought is either triggered by the sanskaras that has left in its train and thought train, or this misconception that Darwin is talking about. Either way, it comes out. And for us to be able to have an intelligent control over it, it looks like he's suggesting not to put it into action, and Baba says in discourses that begin to think of the opposite thoughts. For example, you have an urge to eat something that it's not good for you, and you're already aware that such thing is harm your health situation and so forth. And then all of a sudden you have an urge to eat this processed food, for example, or have a craving for so much sugar and so forth. That's the sanskaras coming from our desires, lost desires. And so for us to control over it, we should be able to control it at the level not to put it into action. But it seems that Darwin is suggesting for us to almost be proactive about these thoughts, like being alert enough that when is it happening? So by the time it's happening, we already know it's happening, and we have a antithesis, we have a cure for it. It looks like that's what he's trying to explain here.
Yeah, well, we'll hold that. It'll probably get answered in the next stretch here, or clarified.
Peter?
All right, thank you. To answer, I don't remember exactly what Jeff just asked, but to attempt to answer answer the questions Jeff just asked, can I think this back? I remember going to, I was going to a career counselor. I did a bunch of testing, and it gave me an IQ score. It gave me an aptitude. I remember very, very specifically asking the career counselor. Oh, I had this chat with when I was practicing massage. There was a doctor that said you should go to school for nutritional biochemistry, and I thought to myself, what the heck is that? And we chatted and we had a nice talk. And I went back to this career counselor, and And I asked him like a little kid, what is that? I said, is that pre-med? He says, yes, Peter, that's pre-med. And I said, per my IQ score, per my aptitude, do you think I could pull off this major? He says, yes, you're a smart dude. Yes, you can. And I thought to myself, so I just have to get over myself, let go of all my old garbage, and then I could do this. He says, yes, basically that's the case. And then when I went back home, so I was living with my parents, I looked around and I said, why am I here? I'm broke. I'm at home. I'm supposed to be this really smart dude with these aptitudes, and look at my life. It doesn't match. It simply doesn't match. And then I listened to somebody, and all right, the God inside saying to give this name anyway, because a lot of people hate this name. But I used to be an avid watcher of Dr. Phil. And he says things in such a clear, distinct way. And he said, people generate the results that they believe they deserve to have. I said, well, obviously I must think I deserve to generate crap and garbage in my life. I'm this smart dude generating absolutely, excuse my French, shitty results that I'm miserable with, but I learned to like them. And then I followed the yellow brick road. There was a vision that came to me of abuse that happened in a house. I went to a Christian counseling center, and she made it clear enough to me that people that grow up in these abusive environments, because they feel so disgusting inside, and when there's no parent there, I'll say a healthy parent that can explain to us, it's not you. These events happened. They have nothing to do with you. There was no one to explain that in a way that I could clearly understand. So therefore, I took it all as my gosh darn fault, or at least most of it. I still live in the guilt, unfortunately, that I created this nonsense. And when I found out about the abuse from my father, which was beyond contempt, I remember leaving the session with this substance dripping from me. I didn't understand what it was, but when I look back at it, I understood that it was shame. But I said to myself, why am I feeling this? I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything, but I felt it. And I mean, when Jeff was saying, how does these unconscious messages show themselves in daily life? When I saw my IQ, my intelligence, my aptitude, and where I was living, it was becoming much more clear how my unconscious mind was affecting me. And that's, quite frankly, I listened to it today, that mirror work course where it talked about affirmations, do 500 of them a day. My jaw dropped to like 500 of these. When I listened to it 6 months ago, it said 100. So I said, okay, I can swing with 100. The rest of the time, I'll just take Baba's name or something. And I did it, but it was give me a stark understanding of where unconscious thought can bring me and how important it is to start working on the unconscious mind to move in another direction. And I'm still working on it. I'm still work in progress, but I can see little by little the power is going up and my life is getting better gradually. It's not at a pace that I really like, but on the other hand, I've learned to like it. I mean, I settle for it, unfortunately. And I'm getting a gag order on myself. So on divine gag order. So I'll end it at that. Thanks.
Good. That's a good example of that whole dynamic.
Very much so. And Jay?
Yeah. I'm not remembering exactly what prompted this, but earlier what came to me was fear of dogs, like something I've struggled with. And I've noticed that sometimes I have to trick myself into just being really friendly to a dog to bring out that in that dog. And I think we know that when there's fear, they sense it. So there's this tension that builds up between you, and it can lead to, barking or biting. So yeah, it's weird. It's like once you're aware of it, I guess at least you can give it a shot to transform it in the moment. And maybe the more you do it, then that becomes your norm, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, good. No, all that we can change our life by working on these internal things for sure.
That is a great application of that. Baba says how if we don't love him, well, pretend to love him, right? He tells Erich. I feel like the loving dogs, that was actually a very good illustration of it.
Yeah, kid yourself, he used to say. Hey, well, seeing through misconceptions. I think we got time for one.
Possibly two. Page 24, seeing through misconceptions.
Seeing through misconceptions. This is all rather esoteric and difficult to communicate at the level of reason. As we rise above the realm of duality to levels of intuition and insight, we get more and more mental clarity and inner awareness about these things. This is all part of one's individual experience. My best experiences of working with the subconscious were under Baba's guidance, where I would find myself plunged into the subconscious and able to work at that level. There I was able to clear house, so to speak, and remove the swarms of sanskaric mosquitoes instead of being bitten by them. We can learn how to shoo them from our consciousness so that they no longer affect our conscious life. All this is why it is so important for us to evaluate our thoughts, our desires, our feelings, everything we are exposed to. Little by little along the spiritual path, we work to correct the misconceptions in our subconscious and to intercept the whole mechanism of sanskaric pattern formation. We learn different facts, those based on truth, to counteract our misconceptions. We will see through them and understand where they lead. And then we have to make a choice of whether we want to continue making sanskaric veils or go in a clearer direction. My own impression is that many of us allow ourselves to become inert in our habits of living. We believe in doubts. We believe in our limitations. We believe in all sorts of things that everyone else seems to believe in too, when they actually are not what they seem to be. And we remain at a level where there are doubts and fears and anxieties and opposites and things of that sort, instead of concentrating on God or Baba and making our lives on him. Staking our lives on him.
Any comments there? I mean, of course, Darwin is very much about being proactive in changing the outer circumstances of our life by working internally and trying to become aware of these impelling forces within our feelings and our desires at that level, so we don't have to act them out outwardly. Looks like everybody's been able to see through. Oh.
Ken, go ahead.
All right. Okay. For me, I think this is something I've been talking with Betty about for a couple of days. But for me, it's the difference between acting and reacting versus resonating to the person in front of me, or what's out there. And in the Infinite Intelligence book, Baba used the word frail. And I thought, what are things that are frail? Well, things that are frail are things that change. I feel something's good, I feel something's bad, there are things that change. So what doesn't change, And when I relate that to myself, the things that change for me, it's like, my thinking, my understanding, my emotional reactions one way or another, my actions, my doing. It's very active. It's very much my ego. And the things that are not frail, that consciousness which is unchanging, is more receptive consciousness. It's the act of knowing, the act of feeling, the act of being rather than doing, just being. So if you're being with someone, you get into this receptive mode and it sort of slows the mind down. And I find myself more resonating with people at that level. And at that level, to me, it puts me in touch with a little bit closer to that point where the mind is stopped and mind can see self, instead of the mind is working and it sees ego and it sees body and it sees universe, you know? And that's closer to Baba in my experience, because Baba is in me and Baba is in the other person, as Baba is everywhere. And so to connect at that level is to, in essence, allow acknowledgement at the level of unity, at that level of resonant connection. And it strikes me that that's a service in the world, that we live what we preserve. So if we can help to preserve the resonance of unity in diversity, that's a service that we can provide with our consciousness. So that's kind of the way that I've been sort of struggling with a particular point.
Boy, beautifully said, Ken. That was excellent. And resonance, there's a response, but resonance is even richer, I think. Resonate with someone. Beautifully said. Boy.
Yeah, Jeff, you were talking about Darwin being proactive. Well, I'm reminded of a little Christmas story that took place about, well, I guess about 45 years ago. And I was living about 90 minutes south of Schenectady in a house, a student house. Michael Siegel lived there, a few other Baba lovers. And we decided one snowy Saturday evening to drive to Darwin's. Michael had an old Dodge Dart. He called it the Avocar. And it was a very faithful car. So three of us piled in the car. We're driving up the New York Thruway and it's snowing harder and harder. And by the way, we just had about 25 inches of snow here in Albany, the 8th greatest of all time. So we're driving up the Thruway and the car is starting to skid left, skid right. We kept going on and on. We said, no, we're not going to turn back. We're going to go to that meeting no matter what. So we finally arrived and around and took our boots and our snowsuits, you know, and all that stuff off and sat down. And Darwin was just beaming at us. And the first thing he said was, you know, all the hardships the wise men had to go to see Jesus. They went through all sorts of struggles and all sorts of difficulties, but they got there. And he just made a point about making effort, that he was really, really happy that we made that effort. And I'm also reminded of a dream. I think one of the people in the group had this particular dream sometime in the mid to late 70s. And Darwin came to that person in the dream and he said, Gene is working within and another person, that person is working within. You need to be working within. In other words, that answers that word about inert that we just read, you know.
Yeah.
We have to be inwardly alive and inwardly active and alert and not get complacent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And also, one other thing, there'll always be a tree in the living room there, beautifully decorated. And Darwin would always read from Matthew around the Christmas meeting. And Jean would always have little gifts under the tree. And I don't know how many pairs of socks I got over the years, but it was always a real treat because, you know, Darwin was with Jesus. So to be with him in that atmosphere in this tiny little living room where you can mostly fit 10 or 12 people, and it was always very special. As Hugh Flick, I think, will attest to as well, right, Hugh?
Absolutely. That's you're spot on there. Yeah, actually, Gene used to give socks to people who had holes in their socks a lot of times.
Yeah. I have my share of socks as well.
Thanks. It's just about, there's been some progress towards my question was, because of course, the statement is that my best experience of working with subconscious work under Baba's guidance, where I'd find myself plunged into subconscious and be able to work at that level. So that's very, very fortunate, to be led there. So my question was then, well, how about little old me? How am I going to do this? And the different comments by participants here has sort of been, helpful. But it is, I guess, like the next paragraph, all this is why it is so important for us to evaluate our thoughts, our desires, and our feelings, everything we're exposed to. So for me, maybe that's my answer to my question is, start to do that at least when you think something, say, why am I thinking this? I don't know if anybody has a comment about that. That's mine. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It's not like Darwin was saying, just kind of put yourself on cruise control. You got to be moving up and down the gears all the time. You think that he seemed like he was so relaxed and everything, but he was internally working all the time, but joyously working. It wasn't like, but he was, the turbines were turning over all the time of Baba and Baba's love.
To stand still is to go backwards.
Yeah.
At least that.
Yeah, he used to say that for sure.
And Elizabeth Robinson.
So something has been mulling around in my head since the last couple of sections, but I wasn't sure if it was apropos because I seem to be looking at this from more of an external view, like looking at other people. I guess what I've noticed and what I was thinking this was about in some way is that when you're dealing with another person and let's say it's something difficult, like there's a issue between the two of you, there's a misunderstanding. What I have found recently, and I mean really recently, just since September maybe, what will happen is something different. I'll listen to whatever the person is saying, and I'll have a different response than I would have previously. And I'm not sure exactly what this is about. I'm pretty sure it has to do with Baba, though. It's stopping, and it's really like, I can't remember his name, Ken. It's more like a resonance where you're trying to resonate and feel with whatever that person is saying. So it's kind of more of an empathetic. So it is really a kind of putting yourself apart, but you also have to be seeing yourself, which I guess is the part where you can't be inert. You have to be watching. You have to be attentive, I guess. I know I'm not saying this very well, but in any case, what it allows me to do is when I'm listening to that person is instead of judging, trying to see where they're coming from and realizing sometimes that if the person is not a Baba person in particular, that they're dealing with their own stuff and that it's important to know that that is separate from what I might be doing, what they might think I'm doing, but I still have to listen to it and then respond in a way that is caring for what they're going through. whatever that is. So I think it makes me more understanding and more compassionate. And I do think it has to do with resonance. But I'm not sure if this is exactly what we're talking about, because, you know, my concern was, well, maybe this is just egotistical on my part, you know. But I hope not. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like a different way of interacting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, beautiful, Elizabeth, really. These are all very touching, all the different ways that people deal with these ticklish situations.
And Kathy?
So, Ray, you were right on it when you were talking about you have to ask why. Somatic experiencing, which is a really awesome technique by Dr. Peter Levine, really helps you to be in two places at once. And one place is the present, and the other is in the place that's getting triggered by whatever environmental experience you're having, or a comment that makes you feel something, you know, that either triggers something good or and puts you in two places at once. And so when we watch ourselves and we pay attention that way and become really conscious, then we get to go, oh, why I'm feeling this way because that happened back, da, 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 da. So you might feel something that has nothing to do with the present other than that it resonates with an experience. But if you can do that and just be the observer. And the statement that I used to hear in school from John Chitty, who's a wonderful human being, used to be just, isn't that interesting? You know, no matter what it is, isn't that interesting? You know, kind of thing. So it's like this beautiful, gentle, neutral, you know, we could accept that, you know, kind of thing. And so that would be what I would like to share with you, Ray, that has really worked for me. And that somatic experiencing is if you're not familiar with it, it's something you might want to read about, because it's a really excellent technique you can use on yourself, and also, you know, or go see people that can really help if there's something big to work on.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to share something quickly. My husband and I have been going kind of in different directions. I have certain things that I do and interests that keep me busy during COVID, and he's got his. And what happens is, after time, I mean, we're talking weeks, there's a separation that starts to occur because that's just the way he and I probably have some subconscious thing that happens that brings us to more disconnection. And then I start to long for the connection. And so I brought it up last night, like, we need to talk. When you're good, let's sit down. If it can't be tomorrow, let's make it Monday. Okay, he said. So what I did, and he's been working, churning about some spiritual aspect of himself. And I've been also churning about some internal things in me, but they're, you know, separate from each other. So what I did was, I kind of asked Mehera, since it was this special day, to please help me so that I could approach this in the best possible way with Baba's love. And so we just had a little time before Effort and Grace, and we sat down, and it was like everything fell away. And it was that space of resonance that Ken referred to. We were just being with each other, and there wasn't blame and there wasn't shame. It was just kind of looking at things and saying, okay, yeah, that's great. You know, maybe we'll do something with that, or maybe not even, but, you know, and just the reconnection occurred. And yes, it was like, it wasn't about us. I could tell that it was something operating between us that was not us. And thank you, Mehera. So that's what I got.
Yeah. Thank you, Ruth. I love these. from your
So
own
sweet.
experience.
And Stuart?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of an example that I think really touches on a lot of what's being said and asked. And thinking, let's say somebody that you tend to be aggravated by, you find them annoying, and you're aware of it in yourself, but you say, well, next time I see them, I'm going to make a choice to just kind of hold that in reserve. See if I can kind of put my ego on a back shelf and focus on them. And let's say you run into them and you do what you said, what you chose you would do, and you actually ask them more about themselves and you listen more. And son of a gun, and I've had this happen, the annoyance disappeared. And there's a magic to it, that there's an expansion, and related also to what Jeff said, I found I had genuine interest in them. And yet, the pattern was there, and I made a choice to sidestep the pattern and try to go beyond it.
Yeah. Beautiful, Stu. These are all great hints.
Very nice. And Mehera Prasad?
Yes, to Ray's point, and this is my experience that, in terms of evaluating the thoughts and feelings, usually it comes up as a result of some disturbance that we feel internally. There is a energy disturbance that we feel internally that's not quite compatible with our innermost being. And when that happens, it's usually, some form of, worry or anxiety or jealousy or, hatred or any of those. And then I evaluate, what is that's causing me to, feel that disturbance. And then if it's a desire, I try to find out where is that going to lead to, what happens if that desire is not fulfilled, and why am I feeling that? It's usually a result of not feeling complete, which is a misconception too, right? So sometimes, it's not very easy to find out what is the disturbance. And in those cases, I just repeat Baba's name. And almost 100% of the time, within a few minutes, there is some guidance that comes through, some thought or some direction that helps me to clear that disturbance. And then, you go back to, you go back to a state where you're more compatible with your inmost being.
Beautifully said. Beautifully. I think of Baba's name as kind of like that Pac-Man. He goes around and eats up all your impressions, and it'll get you out of a lot of jams. Well, I think we've come to the end of our rope here.
That's a good analogy, Pac-Man, and we're running away.
Yeah. So let's have a few moments of silence, and subtle veils is our next the next thing. Okay, let's have a few moments of silence, and then Stu is here. After we have kind of some, just after 7 o'clock, we can kind of hang out a little bit. Now, if Stu wants to lead us in a heart-centered meditation, which is he's up for it. It can be very valuable. We can get a wonderful experience of Baba by his just very gentle guidance. And It's not a 3-hour meditation, folks. It's doable within our schedule. Okay, so let's have a few moments of silence, and wonderful, all your remarks and everything. Jai Baba. Yeah. Wonderful sharing. Bill, do you have a song for us? Just not to, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, I can, anything you'd like to hear, Jeff, in particular?
Oh, how about Love Alone Prevails?
All right.
Which I like. There's a whole story about this wording, Love Alone Prevails, but that's for another time.
Yeah, I'll do that. I just have to get my music here, and I do have a very inexpensive Chromebook, and I don't have Zoom Original Sound, which means the guitar gets a little distorted, but I'll do the best I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone have any anything to share or remarks? Anything that that comes up?
Through countless lives we've come, struggling, persevering. Now our aim is one, and love alone prevails. Love alone prevails. Love alone prevails. It will cure all ills. Love alone prevails. The lane may twist and turn, night shadows slip around us, yet the flame within will burn, for love alone prevails. Love alone prevails. Love alone prevails. Through all our travails, love alone prevails. Life's every joy and pain, dedicated to you. We labor not in vain, where love alone prevails. Love alone prevails. Love alone prevails. It dissolves the veil. Love alone prevails. The world's a dream forsaken. We're clinging Mehera to you. In your arms we will awaken when love alone prevails. Love alone prevails. Love alone prevails. It will never fail. Love alone prevails. The world's a dream forsaken. We're clinging Mehera to you. In your arms we will fail. It will never fail. It will never fail. It will never fail. Love alone prevails.
Ooh.
And that third verse, life's every joy and pain dedicated to you, that was definitely inspired by Darwin.
Mhm.
It dissolves the veils. All those lines are, that's Darwin's inspiration.
Ooh, beautiful song. Oh, yeah. You know, there's in the line "Love alone prevails." I don't know if it's. I'll share this with you. This is back in 1978 and 76, 78. Fred Winterfeld, who lived at the center there, opposite the old gateway. Fred and Ella Winterfeld, old followers of Baba from the 40s. And he got pancreatic cancer. And one thing about Fred is before he had this, he had for years in his morning meditation, he would be sitting in a chair and he had a chair opposite him. And in the morning, Baba would appear right there in the chair and he would especially talk about people in the nearby community in Myrtle Beach, about different people and their lives. People were struggling, there were divorces, there were deaths and everything. And he would have these special kind of intimate times with Baba. and you know, you could be like going into the gateway for an evening program and he might take somebody aside and take them in the back room and say, how are you doing? How's your marriage doing? You know, and they would, you know, they would say, well, Fred, we're having difficulties. We're thinking of splitting up. But he will have talked to Baba, with Baba about that in the morning. He had a beautiful thing. But anyway, when he got pancreatic cancer, the pain was so great, and he tried all of these different therapies, Laetrile and Mexico stuff and diets and all of that. And it didn't help him. And he felt like, he really genuinely felt that Bob was letting him down. He was asking for Baba's help. And then what the worst thing that happened is he lost that morning, these morning sessions with Baba. He was in such pain and Baba left him there. And he was in a lot of pain, but just, you know, kind of how he just felt Baba wasn't helping him. And I used to go by after work and during the day, but on my days off, but at the end of the day, I would go and I would massage his legs kind of vigorously so he could take his mind off of the pain. He would, you know, he would take morphine sometimes, but then he lost that companionship of Baba taking the drug and everything. So he would just not take the morphine until he was really in an extremity of pain. But anyway, so one time after work, I came up to Pine Lodge, was the name of the place where they stayed. And I could hear him moaning in pain, groaning in pain from outside. And I kind of hesitated about going in, but somehow I decided I'll go in and see how he is. And I opened the door and Ella was there with him on the sofa. And, you know, he looked at me and he said, love, he held up his hand, love alone prevails. And he had come to that place where I knew exactly what he was saying. He was saying, don't say that this isn't Baba's love. This pain is Baba's love. And I realized that, I should slip out, and because they were embarrassed of the pain. And as I was going out the door, he held his hand up again. Again, I say, love alone prevails. So he came to that, one of the deepest realizations, that it is all Baba, right to the end of his life. And then afterwards, I went to Kitty's. She asked me how Fred and Ella were doing. And I repeated what I just said to you. And at the time, she was working on her book, her autobiography. And she took that name, Love Alone Prevails. That's the title of Kitty's book that came from Fred. And then Bill came along and made a song out of it. Love Alone Prevails.
Wow.
Jeff, I'm reminded of something that happened when I was in Mehrabad one year.
Thank you, Jeff, for that story.
Yeah.
I was going through a really hard time one day, particularly, and I was just sitting in the samadhi, and it just occurred to me. I just said to Baba, well, I guess, Baba, everything is your prasad, isn't it? And there was a boom. It was like a sonic boom instantaneously after I said that.
Yeah.
And I had, in that evening in my room, I had one other thought that I sent to Baba. Boom! I won't say what that thought was. There were only 2 sonic booms that whole day, though. So I guess I was in the right place at the right time. But everything is your prasad, Bob. And boy, if we can accept that.
Yeah.
That's
Beautiful.
really,
that's
a great
where Fred got at an extremity of pain. So Terry has got that very book right there. Bring it up a little closer. Love Alone Prevails. And there she is. The embodiment of whimsicality and service. Any other, and if there's nothing else, Stu will lead us in a heart-centered meditation for anybody who wants to stay on. And it can be a very valuable thing, especially this particular chapter. We've been talking about our interpersonal relationships, relationships with others, and this can be immense help in that too.
And Jeff, this has been fantastic. It's like every week it seems it's kind of magical. Every week it seems to touch on something that's so necessary to hear.
Yeah.
Especially with what's going on in the world, it's great. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank all of you. It's all everybody's putting into this homemade stew.
I was going to say soup.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I guess I should say soup would be better. Okay. Any other comments before we ask Stu?
I'd just like to share. I was driving for most of the meeting today from New Jersey back to my apartment, and I had a day with like such pain in my solar plexus, but it was emotion. It's not physical. And without a way out. And it wasn't until you told that, everything was just weaving all throughout Effort and Grace. And it wasn't until you told that story, Jeff. And I felt the truth of that. I still have some of that sensation there where I can let it go as not something that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's just love. And that's profound, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Jeff, I also experienced something not to this extent, but first, thank you so much. You really brought home what Fred was going through pain. Obviously, he was feeling Baba's love through pain. And so one time I remember I was in trust compound with Bao Kalchuri. It was afternoon that when we were there, we would go visit him in the trust compound. And then when the time for Arti would come, that day he was under a lot of pain. Despite of his pain, and he had cold, so there was a running nose, and he wouldn't even notice that he had a running nose. And despite of caretakers asking him not to come out and be with others, he would. He perhaps would feel the urge and the longing of the visitors. So as the time came, closer to Arti time, 7 o'clock Arti time, I was leaving usually at 6:30, taking rickshaw back, heading to Samadhi to be at evening Arti. And I said, well, Bauji, I gotta go. I wanna go to Baba's Samadhi now to have to participate in Arti. And he told me out of nowhere, he said, tell Baba when you go there, tell Baba everything is okay and I have no complaints. I have no complaints. He was saying that to me because I tended to complain about every little thing that happens, every little pain I have, every discomfort and so forth. He was telling me to share this with Baba. It wasn't about him. So I totally got it from him. Thank you.
Beautiful story. Beautiful. Wow. Okay, Stu, what do you say?
So a lot of you have been on this meditation before, and you know that every so often I just give a quick preface, and I'll do it again tonight. And part of what we do is focus on sending Baba's infinite love to someone else. And I've mentioned that I first learned that aspect of the meditation in the context of conflict. And it can be incredibly powerful and disarming and magical in that way. And yet it's just a wonderful gift to share, period. So.
And before you begin, Stu, there's Alan Manukian's got a picture of Fred Winterfeld there. With
Yeah,
Baba.
beautiful. Yeah.
That's Fred.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if everybody could mute, please, that'd be nice. Jai Baba. And now just sit back in your chair, or if you're laying down, just ease yourself into wherever you are and start breathing into your belly. And we'll let the world drift away even a little more during this time. And we'll keep breathing gently but fully into our bellies the whole time. And now bring your awareness to your heart and your heart space. And this is the home within all of us of Meher Baba's infinite love, which is always there, always available. And always present as a gift that he keeps on giving to us. And just take note if you see or feel anything as you touch into your heart and your heart space and the infinite love that's available. And breathe in as you settle into your heart a little more. And now let your heart guide you and picture somebody, a person or even a group who you would like to focus on sharing Baba's infinite love with. And let your heart guide you again, whoever comes up for you. And get a good image of them. And breathe into the image you have. And take note if you see or feel anything. As you focus on this image of them. And now picture Mehera Baba's infinite love is starting to flow endlessly into their heart and their heart space. And I see this brilliant, warm, kind of liquid golden light just generously filling their heart and their heart space, every bit, filling every little corner. And this is a giving love with no strings. It's healing, soothing, enlightening, forgiving. And there's no end to it. And keep breathing in as you see and you feel this incredible infinite love just continue to flow into the heart space of whoever you've chosen to focus on. And now see and feel this warm, infinite love overflow from their heart and their heart space and start to fill their entire being, every bit of them. And again, it's soothing, healing, forgiving, enlightening. Just totally generous love. And notice whatever you might experience as you see and feel Baba's love just endlessly fill and flow through their heart space, their entire being, filling and flowing right through, cleansing, healing, giving. And Baba makes this love available to us without end. And now let's give thanks for being able to focus sharing Mayor Baba's infinite love and know that you can return here again and again. So let's say farewell for now to whoever you've chosen to share the love with, and gently bring your attention back to your own heart and heart space. And breathe in as you settle in there. And and notice whatever you might see or feel. And now start to picture Mehera Baba's infinite love filling your heart and your heart space. This beautiful, brilliant, bright, warm, soothing love just flowing into every bit of your heart and your heart space. This love is giving, healing, soothing, forgiving, enlightening. And it's there for your heart to drink. And now see Baba's endless love overflowing from your heart and your heart space. And now filling every bit of your being. So you're filled with his infinite love. And let your heart and your whole being just keep drinking this delicious, infinite love. And we never know what wonders this love might bring about.
let alone find paper.
And now let's stay one more moment with Baba's infinite love, filling every bit of your heart and your heart space and your whole being. And now let's give thanks for being able to focus on seeing and feeling Meher Baba's infinite love flow into our own hearts and our whole being. And know that you can return here again and again. There's no end to the love, no end to the ocean. And gently start to bring yourself back to wherever you're sitting or laying. And take a few moments to adjust. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. And if anybody would like to share anything, we'd love to hear from you.
Share that it's so visceral, the golden healing nectar. It's a very physical, visceral, as well as emotional and energetic experience.
Hmm. Did you feel it flowing into you, Cindy?
Yeah, I mean, through the person that I was sending it to, and then, I mean, I could, of course, see and feel that, but then for me, into every aspect of my being, and then through time and space too, to the
Oh, wow.
finite past and future as well, like all of my being.
Wow, that's marvelous.
Thank God.
Hmm. That's a wonderful, wonderful image. Hmm.
I can share something.
Yeah, please, Alan.
I sitting with Baba. It was like he said to me, "You are responsible for the course of thought in your mind. Focus on me. Change course again and again. Forget about failure and gain. I will help you."
Hmm.
I just really appreciated that he said, "Forget about failure and gain." Instead of about, I usually hear myself say the word success, but it was just forget about failure and gain.
Hmm. Wow, it's wonderful experience.
Yeah, very meaningful.
Hmm.
Stuart, it's not much, but may I? This time to prepare for your lovely meditation, I actually went outside, got a stretch before because my legs can be so tight. And I think more and more I'm learning I have to be, when I'm more active, I'm a little bit more happy and responsive. But one thing I did, I wonder when I was able to listen to your words a little bit more intently this time, and substituting my own between the dots. And nice or not, I live in a land of hurricanes. So what I did was I pictured my lovely sister that I have just absolute angst toward now. And I pictured a hurricane in her heart and saying Baba's name in that and seeing little Babas in this hurricane circulating in her heart. And I just says, let me just put the work in and just dedicate it to him, put the work in, and I don't know where it's going to be toward. But, and, a couple months ago, I took my 5th direct hit, but this time it was from a tropical storm in Florida. And I sometimes I think about putting something like a hurricane in there and then just it's like deliberately pulsating this velvet light of some kind.
Wow.
And one of my borderline worries is when I do something, what kind of energy is behind it. So sometimes I do use tool of using his name while I'm doing the exercise to elevate it so I don't feel guilty for what's happening. Because I don't want to be, I mean, there's a part of me that wants to just go in there with a fist and torment. And I says, all right, that's not the purpose of this. So, you know, so I threw his name in there and pictured a hurricane. Maybe you can call it like a what do you call it? Like a dusting with a power tool, but having his name attached to it. And then again, taking the velvet light and just kind of expanding it in there and doing that, right? And then doing it to me, but I guess maybe I'll have to wait till later on to get the result. Thanks.
I love the images, Peter. It's really marvelous. And I'll tell you something. Often enough, I've said to Baba, like before leading a group or working with somebody, something like that, I'll say, Baba, would you please flood in? And in spite of my ego, would you pour in? And would you just take over? And then I leave it to him to do that.
It works.
Yeah, yeah.
It comes through. Baba comes through.
That's so beautiful, Stuart. I said those almost exact words to Baba when I was sending love to the person I was sending to. Please take my, rush in, like take my ego out of it. Like I had a difficult time having my thoughts out of it.
Yeah.
And it was very helpful once I gave it to him.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And we can do that, we can act on that intention, Yeah, thanks, Cindy. And Peter, I love the little Baba hurricanes swirling around with love. That's an image to remember.
That was really nice, Stuart. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Marcia.
Oh, I was just going to say, does anybody ever check with the person they send all that energy with to see if if they felt anything?
I haven't yet.
I just thought about it. I was praying for my daughter because she's urgent care nurse and she just took that COVID shot yesterday, so I was worried about her. So I just completely flew all my energy towards her and I kind of I felt like light flowing out for me, but I hope it works.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, there is light flowing out, Marcia, and you never know what might happen. And if we picture this as Baba's love and light, then that's up to him. And again, I've said it on this meeting so many times. I've witnessed so many, I call them miraculous occurrences that I couldn't even dream up, in my life and the lives of other people, working with this.
Yeah.
I experienced a powerful family healing around many members of my family that have been in angst for 26 years. And it wasn't a feeling, it was a knowing that it was happening. It was experiencing it. And interestingly, my first husband, who's the father of my 4 children, is having heart failure, and it's extreme. And for the first time, there was this huge experience of healing within the whole family, of everyone coming together in support and open-hearted. And that river of love, that golden love flowed throughout. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Oh, that's
Beautiful.
wonderful, Betty.
Oh,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
very, very
Wow.
wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can keep doing this.
Yes,
If you're so disposed, I'd encourage you.
I will. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Wow.
welcome. You're welcome.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Baba.
Jay Bob.
Yeah. Lovely.
God, I love the variety of stories. You couldn't make this up.
Okay, I have another one. So I was in Effort and Grace, and I had to leave because I'm getting a rare phone call from a family group. And this is one of the groups I concentrated on about a week or two ago. And I came back in the meditation right when you said, and you can come back to this place whenever you want. And you were saying, think of who to think of. So I thought, well, this group is right in front of my mind. There was no way I could be thinking of anything else. Although I did get distracted by, well, maybe I should include that part, and maybe I should include this person. Anyway, but at one point you said, what is it that you feel? And I must tell you, I felt joy, complete joy, because it was so joyful doing this Zoom call with them, which is why I had to leave the Effort and Grace. And so I came back into that part of the meditation. And anyway, so that was a prayer answered for sure. It was harder for me to take it in the way Cindy did. I like that image of extending out to the universe and across time. But anyway, so it was similar to what Betty had. But anyway, so I apologize coming late, but I came and went as I could. I had a priority to do that, which anyway, thank you.
I'm glad to have you and to hear from you, Elizabeth. That's wonderful, wonderful.
It's kind of like a Christmas present, the joy. Coming
It
into
definitely
the season.
is. And
Yeah.
truly, I felt joy. It was great to feel joy, to feel joy during these times. And, it came through on their faces. I would look at them, like my godchild, Lindsay, her face was lit up, and there were, little kids, and one of them is learning the cello, and I didn't even know it. So it was just, they're telling me about sledding and how exciting that was. I mean, anyway, I don't mean to go on and on, but it was really joyful.
Yeah, lovely.
That's great. That's great.
This is Marianne Lewis from New York City.
Yeah.
And I can see all of you. I don't have a camera, so I can't be seen. That's part of my misconception in line with our effort and grace today. I have misconceptions about, in this life, about if I'm seen and heard from my real self, I'm going to get shot down. And so I've been working on that for decades. And so tonight, with the holiday here and everything, and I'm a more emotional person. I'm not talking about feelings. I'm talking about emotions as a defense against my feelings. I sometimes just get overwhelmed with, especially around the family issues. And I have my daughter, her husband, and 2 grandsons who are teenagers live right nearby me here in New York City. Usually we have Christmas together. This year is the first time I'm entering with masks on into their home. We're going to exchange presents, and I assumed I would have a bite to eat because I was tested, and they're all going to be tested before we get together. And we'd keep a distance. Then my daughter informed me tonight that, no, you wouldn't be eating with us. That feels too open, take a mask off and eat. So I felt I was very wise. I'm very wise with what I do. So I felt a deep disappointment and grief and loss. And that has been a theme of my life, is grief and loss. And Baba, fortunately, I'm very grounded in the conceptions, the lay of the land. And when I'm off of it with all my emotions, then I tap into Baba will come through and I get a message, you belong to me. I know I'm being taken through detachment from all of those I'm closest to karmically, and Baba has shown me this. And so tonight, in being here, I know I needed just to listen a lot because of this emotional, shaky aspect that comes up. So having this meditation as the conclusion, not the end, but the conclusion of the evening, I just laid down on I have a floor mat with a pillow, and at the end was this peace. Peace came over me. And so even though I still feel this shakiness, that's not the predominant experience. What is predominant is peace. So I thank you all of you, Jeff, you, Stuart, everyone who shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Beautiful.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for telling us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I had a similar experience, and I feel the joy, the release of it too. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is wonderful that they don't want to take any chance of eating without having masks, being unmasked, because especially the way this thing is spreading now, it's incredible how this is being transmitted, and it's not entirely known how,
You just have to not share the air.
Yeah,
that's what someone said, talked about don't share the air, which I think sums it up.
Yeah, I wish we had more people around here that had your daughter's attitude, because people are a little bit cavalier around here, and it's a little bit dangerous. Yeah.
And just I hate to mention this, except that I feel like I have to. In England, it's really gotten worse. There's a strain that's become even more virulent in terms of contagion, and who knows if it's gotten to the U.S. But just please, everybody, be safe. Take care of yourselves.
Yeah. That's supposed to be 70% more transmittable than what we have. Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez.
Now that is awful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just makes me think sometimes. Remember one of Baba's declarations back in the 50s where he says a strange disease is going to attack his body? I always felt like, since the I don't know, the world is him, it just feels like, could this be like one of those embodiments of that or something?
Yeah, Kitty Davy kind of gave that interpretation that it could be an outer thing being the outer being his body. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it also brings to mind what he said about 3/4 of the world will be destroyed. And I mean, who knows what that really means, whether it's literal or figurative.
Right.
But it makes you think twice,
Yeah.
Wow.
But there's still joy.
There is.
And peace. So joy, love, peace, and what's the other one for Advent?
Huh.
Gratitude.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Great.
This is what God looks like when he comes into creation.
Beautiful.
Even the pain that we create in him, which he bears with such grace.
Wow, wonderful pictures.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Wow.
Is that Alan that is finding
Yeah.
these? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alan's great at finding. Oh boy, oh boy.
Mm.
Well,
Look at all those photos. Oh, wow. One's up there.
I may have to eat dinner here at some point.
It feels
then-
like time.
And we'll get some come on at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
We'll have a, but I had an unusual one, but I experienced, but I will, I might share that with Stu privately. It was kind of unusual.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Happy to hear it.
Stuart and everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Wonderful, Julie. Wonderful you're here, and your mom and dad. I think of them.
bless you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything, all of you.
Yeah. Thank you, Stu.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks as always.
Yeah, Alan, thanks
Boy.
for the photos. Yeah.
And this is like
Yeah,
the
thanks, Alan.
culmination of what we read. You know, you get to. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, we'll let you eat and get
Yeah.
ready for your next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful to see
Jai
all of
Baba.
you.
Yeah.
Jai Baba.
Jai
All right.
Baba.
Jay
Bye-bye.
Bob.
Okay,
Thanks,
Jeff.
everybody.